It was a wedding that took us to Iceland, a whirlwind trip to attend our nephew's marriage ceremony to a beautiful Icelandic woman, Suna. And so, after a 24-hour journey, we entered a strange, rather mysterious world dubbed the Land of Fire and Ice. We imagined Iceland to be covered with ice, but it surprisingly has a fairly temperate climate with mild but windy winters and cool, damp summers. We were in Iceland in early June when the temperature soared into the 70s. Locals complained that it was so hot that the roads were melting. Because it is warmed by the Gulf Stream, the subpolar oceanic climate has generally higher temperatures than most places of a similar latitude. The winters can be difficult, however, with harsh winds and long, dark days of virtually no sun, only gray light for 3 to 4 hours in midday. Winters are punctuated by brief summers, with days that are up to 24 hours of sunlight. A glacier covered Iceland about 10,000 years ago when the Ice Age overlaid much of northern Europe, but now only remnants remain. Although we only had a short time in the country, with a few day trips, we saw many of the characteristic geologic features of the island. These features are repeated again and again in endlessly fascinating configurations. We saw glaciers, glacial rivers, geysers, coastal villages, their geothermal waters, Icelandic horse farms. We saw waterfalls, meandering streams, and the trendy city of Reykjavik. Iceland is a perfect place to virtually see the raw materials of the earth, rocks and water in action. Iceland is a relatively young island, a mere 20 million years old, situated just shy of the Arctic Ocean. Young, but still growing, it has 30 active volcano systems, and over the past 500 years, they have produced 1/3 of the total global lava output. 13 volcanoes have erupted since the settlement of Iceland in 874 AD. Only about 20% of the island is habitable, with everyone living near the coast, and mainly in the southwest. Of Iceland's 200,000 total population, 100,000 live in the capital city of Reykjavik. No one lives in the interior, which is mainly a plateau composed of lava, with mountains and glaciers. The interior has no roads and can only be reached with a guide and a 4-wheel drive vehicle. We landed on an airstrip built between piles of lava rocks. These were produced by a volcano of about 10 years ago. We drove miles through this pretty recent lava field. You can tell by the very sparse cover of moss growing on it. Our first task is to navigate to our destination of Selfoss through towns with confusing names the length of alphabets. The Icelandic language, descended from Old Norse, is said to be one of the most difficult languages to learn on Earth. To give you an idea of the difficulty of pronouncing words from the Icelandic language, I asked Suna, our Icelandic bride, to pronounce the name of the volcano/glacier, the one that erupted in 2010, causing so much air travel disruption. Suna, would you tell me the name of this glacier in Icelandic?
It's Eyjafjallajökull.
Oh, say that again. That's so lovely.
Eyjafjallajökull.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Icelandic still has letters preserved from the ancient runic alphabet. This was an early alphabet from 150 AD used to write the Germanic languages. Delighted to use this information, we went to a very remarkable place, Thingvellir National Park. Thingvellir is the location of the world's oldest parliament. The Icelandic word Thingvellir is formed with an ancient letter called the thorn and is pronounced like the English th, as in the. The word looks like this, but is pronounced like this, Thingvellir. Thingvellir is the heart and soul of Iceland. It is the place where the story of the human history and the natural history converge. What is a rift valley? Iceland is geologically and volcanically active. This graphic, courtesy the U.S. Geological Survey, shows the Rift Valley in Iceland with the western side, or tectonic plate, pulling toward North America and the eastern side pulling toward Europe. This pulling apart is what creates the Rift Valley, accounting for some pretty interesting geodynamics like earthquakes and volcanoes. Here is an aerial view of Thingvellir. On the right side of the photo, you can actually see the Rift Valley, which is in the darker shadow. This is where the two tectonic plates are pulling apart. We walked along the path here, literally between the two continents. The park is located in a rift valley. It is like the much larger Olduvai Gorge in Africa. Rift valleys are created by faults or rifts in the Earth's crust. The spreading apart of the Rift Valley by powerful shifts deep in the earth causes even more erosion by water, thus making the valley even deeper and wider. Visiting Iceland is like taking a course in geology. Iceland is all about the movement of rocks and water. The largest lake in Iceland is located here, Thingvallavatn. Vatn means lake. lakes of rift valleys are among the largest in the world. A couple of others you have most likely heard of are Lake Superior in North America and Lake Tanganyika in Africa. We've looked at the geological history. Now let's look at the political history. Rocks are a history of the earth, and intriguingly, the geologic story of Iceland is presented at a place where the political history also developed. Let me explain that a bit more. Thingvellir is important not only for its epic tectonic movements, but for the world's first parliament, the Althing, an open-air parliament created here in 930 AD. Settled by Norsemen in the 9th century, Iceland was ruled by both Norway and then Denmark until it became independent in 1918 and finally became a republic in 1944. That ceremony symbolically took place here at Thingvellir. As we walk the rift path at Thingvellir National Park, we see some very intriguing buildings in the distance. For hundreds of years, Thingvellir was the center of Icelandic culture and a meeting place when Parliament met every year for 2 weeks. Thousands of Icelanders came from all over the country. Merchants sold goods, entertainers performed, and games and feasts were held. Using the materials available, people built sod houses for shelter during the meeting time. The buildings here are more recent. For example, the church dates from 1859. The pastor of the church is also the warden of Thingvellir National Park. The church stands on a site where there has been a church ever since the establishment of Christianity in the year 1000 AD. These white houses are built on the site of an ancient farmhouse. They are now the summer residence of the President of Iceland. Visitors are advised to stay on the paths and wooden walkways because in this rift valley, where the earth is spreading apart, there are many sinkholes and chasms that should you fall in, you will never return. Oh my gosh, and I wandered off the path to get a shot of the mossy ground cover. Luckily, I am still here to tell you about it. And here are some unexpected Icelandic adventures. Still a bit jet-lagged, we headed off with the British aunties for a day of sightseeing before the wedding. In a tiny coastal village, we found an unusual occupation, an organ maker, who was delighted to show us his creations and his workshop. What a surprise to find a church organ maker at a coastal village. Björkvin Thomason, the organ maker, seemed delighted to show and to tell us about his marvelous craft of designing and building beautiful organs. His organs are amazing, and the guest book, well, worth the trip alone.
25 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How long does it take to build an organ?
Oh, maybe 1 year.
1 year, wow.
1 year.
Yeah.
So did you start in the business yourself, or was your father in the business?
No,
Family, really?
No family.
Oh,
So
I'm the first organ builder in Iceland.
you're the
The
first
first
one?
and only.
oh, wow.
Would you mind coming and take your picture, please? Yeah, yes.
I already did, I didn't even ask. What is this right here?
That's organ pipe. That's my guest book.
Oh, your guest book.
Oh.
Can we sign?
Yeah. I have to get another one.
They've all got signatures.
How old were you when you learned to play it?
I started at 12, I think.
12?
Yeah. Then then I did study music,
Ah.
and then I went to Germany to learn money man. Yeah.
Oh, God.
And here you see, that's just this part of the organ. The lower part is up there, and that's just the lower part from another organ. But it's came 7 meters high.
And what is the glass in there?
Yes, you can
Oh,
turn it.
oh, just to, the pipes will be behind the glass?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. What kind of wood do you use?
Wood, that's oak.
Oak. Is that the best wood
That's
for
very
an
good.
organ?
Oak is very good.
It is good for the-
import that.
Imported,
really,
yeah.
Oh, right, right. There aren't many trees here in
No,
Iceland.
no.
A lively craftsman, Björgvin Thomason played a few tunes for us.
Did you build this one?
Yeah.
Oh, is that cute? Is that, for a child or?
No,
No,
I
it's-
had to make this in Germany at the school.
Ah.
As
Apprentice piece?
yeah.
Sort of a
Yes,
project?
yes,
Wow, it's really,
yes.
so is that your first organ?
My first one. Timbal maker. That's Björk.
Oh,
Oh.
yeah.
And that's the small instrument we built.
And did she sing to your organ music, or is that why you saw her?
But
Björk,
yeah.
yeah. Did she sing to your organ
Yeah,
music?
yeah.
Oh,
It's yeah.
very good.
Oh.
So there's an old one here, very old one.
Oh, wow.
7054.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
I
wow.
built this 7054.
Oh,
His organs are specially designed to fit into unusual spaces or very small churches. And a little postscript about trees in Iceland. Opinions on whether there were ever indigenous trees vary. Many think there were, but that they were soon cut down after settlement. There are now no indigenous trees. The existing ones were planted in little fenced-in tracts called skogurs. Icelandic horses, a rare and woolly breed. We take a day trip with the British aunties before the wedding. We travel past tiny red buildings in the distance, which turned out to be horse farms. These are dwarfed by the high central plateau rising up behind them. Please do not call them ponies. Icelanders take offense to this because they are horses, a special breed of horses. A breed developed in Iceland, they are especially suited to the cold winds and temperatures. Small and compact, they have thick, long, coarse hair and have two extra characteristic gaits, which make them comfortable rides or very fast but smooth rides. Once Icelandic horses leave the country, they can never return because of fears of spreading disease to this pristine breed. A runaway Icelandic horse provided a little adventure for our British aunties.
They went up that way to get in front of him to stop him.
We don't know.
Well, no, he's gone away from someone.
They're coming back again now. It's like.
Geysers, bubbles, hot water, and more. This entire area is covered with hot springs, pools, and geysers. While most of the hot geothermal water heated by underground volcanic activity lies deep below the Earth's crust, sometimes it comes to the surface, where it bubbles, spouts, and steams. Hot water literally leaks from the earth, and it is so hot it comes with warnings. Geysers are pronounced geysers. The Icelandic word is the origin of our English word for these hot water spouts, and is the only word of Icelandic in the English language. Fellow travelers and sightseers with cameras at the ready play hide and seek with Stroker's unpredictable eruptions, which are approximately every 5 to 15 minutes. What in the world are these gigantic pipelines for? The answer is clean geothermal heating. Eco-friendly hot water produced by the internal heat of the earth is pumped from the deep and is then carried in these pipelines to population areas where it provides low-cost heating, hot water, and electricity. Because of clean energy, Iceland is one of the least polluted nations on Earth. The Western Peninsula, a fjord, a tunnel, and a road trip to virtually untouched volcanic activity of millions of years ago. We decide to drive to the Western Peninsula to see some of the pristine sights of coastal Iceland. The coast of Iceland is cut deeply with many fjords around its perimeter. A fjord is a long, narrow inlet with steep sides or cliffs carved out by the movement of glacial ice. From space, we can see how fjords cut deeply into the landmass, making Iceland look like a giant doily out in the Arctic Sea. Because we are short on time, we take a 3.5-mile-long tunnel under a deep blue fjord instead of driving the many extra miles around it. To call this island Iceland is actually a misnomer because much of it is very green. Folklore has it that the discoverer of the island called it Iceland, even though the climate was relatively mild, so no one would want to go there. Ironically, he called his second discovery Greenland, even though it was covered with ice. Thus, he hoped people would be inspired to settle in Greenland instead. Those falls in the distance are the glacial melt, which is running off the interior plateau. As we drive the many miles around the perimeter of the Western Peninsula, I think about how Iceland seems to have it all together. It has one of the highest standards of living in the world. It maintains no army, has universal health care, gender equality, and has the highest literacy rate in the world. In fact, 1 in 10 Icelanders has written a book. These standards beg many questions about why America cannot boast these high levels of social organization. The landscape is like a dreamscape, barren and beautiful and pristine, a place where superstitions flourish. Many native Icelanders believe in gnomes. Shards from volcanoes dot the landscape and are thought to be the source of the natives' belief in gnomes, particularly when you see these in moonlight. The entire coastline of the Western Peninsula is composed of cooled and hardened molten lava from volcanic eruptions eons ago. Here you can see by the contorted shapes of the rocks how that molten rock twists, curls, and buckles as the ferociously hot lava hit the ocean water. You can get a vague idea about how long the lava has been there by the depth of the mosses that grow on it. Helnar is a tiny coastal village built high on a lava cliff overlooking other ancient contorted lava flows. It boasts sod houses with gnomes and a church with many views, the contorted coastline on the front and a glacial mountain behind. From this quaint church in Helnar, you can see the famous Snæfell's Glacier. Snæfell's Mountain is a twofer. You get a glacier, which lies on top of a volcano. It became famous when Jules Verne described it in his famous book, Journey to the Center of the Earth. He used it as the starting point for his fictional journey. Unfortunately, due to global warming, the glacier is melting and won't exist in about 50 years. On the northern side of the Western Peninsula, we experienced a sample of the winter winds. Take a moment to let the wonder of Iceland soak in as we drive the northern tip of the Western Peninsula. Another unexpected adventure was immersing ourselves in the world-famous Blue Lagoon near Reykjavik. Built in piles of lava rock, we followed the path to a wonderful geothermal spa frequented by famous people like Tom Cruise. As weird and wonderful as the Blue Lagoon is, we were just slightly disappointed to learn that it is man-made. The hot water is natural and is pumped from a mile beneath the surface, but the pool, which is filled with the excess water used for heating and electricity production, is not natural. Actually, it is very ingenious, and we were consoled when we saw that the man-made pool closely resembles the color of a natural geothermal lake at Askja. The temperature of the water ranges between 98 to 102 degrees Fahrenheit. It was very cool the day we were in the Blue Lagoon, so we got the full benefit of a misty, surreal dreamscape. Gullfoss, fittingly named the Golden Falls. Next, we explored Gullfoss, an astonishing waterfall that rivals America's Niagara. A thundering 105-foot falls, or foss in Icelandic, plunges into a ravine, creating many rainbows in the mist. Watch and listen to this amazing amount of water. The meltwater from the glacier in the distance forms the glacial river that we see thundering below us on its way to the sea. Reykjavik, the capital of style and art and government. Reminiscent of the maritime city of San Francisco, Reykjavik is built on a hill above the seaport with buildings of a somewhat similar architecture. Situated in the southwestern area of the island, it is the center of commerce and government, as well as the trendy hub of the art and fashion of Iceland. A bit older than San Fran, it is thought to be the first permanent settlement of Iceland, dating from 862 AD. Reykjavik is famous throughout Europe for its nightlife. It's a great place to go out on the town during the summer because there is virtually no night. Would you believe this is sunset at 1 a.m.? The rest of the night will be the gray light of dawn. I will attempt to pronounce the name of this church with my American accent. Here goes. The Hallgrímskirkja. Directly in front of the church is a statue of the very heroic figure of Leif Erikson, the first European to find the North American continent. Leif was a gift of the United States to commemorate the 1,000th year anniversary of the Althing. Remember, the world's first parliament. This iconic church dramatically dominates the low city skyline of Reykjavik. A controversial design, it took 34 years to get it built. The columns on either side of the tower represent volcanic basalt. Not surprisingly, this is a favorite theme of artists in the land of volcanoes. As you look at the church, think about the hardened lava columns we saw earlier on the coast of the Western Peninsula. While touring the interior of the church, we are delighted to notice our village organ maker has designed and built the organ. Iceland's premier sculptor. Adjacent to the Hallgrímskirkja Church is a compelling Icelandic art gallery and the former home of the great Einar Jónsson, renowned as the first Icelandic sculptor. Jónsson lived in his own art. He designed the building as a giant sculpture, and it housed his studio, his residence, and a museum gallery of his work. A photographer's dream, we are allowed to photograph the art in the outdoor sculpture garden. Some of which reflects the dark struggles of the early Icelanders, and other pieces are religious or mythological. Trained in Europe, Jónsson felt artists should follow their own path of originality and imagination instead of following the classical art tradition. We search for familiar symbols in this truly original artwork. The pamphlet I was given states that his work is notable for its allegorical content and reflects concealed deeper meaning, and these words, at least, are straightforward, but Jónsson's amazing artwork is not. As we cross the lava fields once again to catch our flight for the long trip home, we are struck anew by the vastness of the geologic activity at work here in Iceland. While geologic processes are more or less at work in other places on the planet, All of Iceland is an immense showcase of the Earth's elaborate dynamic of rock, water, fire and ice, fire and ice, fire and ice.